Grandma Marlene Carter, the dignified, sharp-minded matriarch and co-founder of the Carter and Monroe law firm, had returned home after a 3-month retreat. During her time away, one thing consumed her thoughts: the future of her grandson, Elijah Carter. Elijah was next in line to lead the firm. Known for his brilliance, quiet strength, and humility, he had kept a low profile for years. Very few people had ever seen him in person. Even among the firm's staff, he remained something of a mystery. At Carter and Monroe, the buzz of anticipation was impossible to miss. Whispers drifted through the sleek glass offices, and wide-eyed glances were exchanged in hallways as news spread that Elijah might soon appear at the firm. "I heard he's fine as hell," whispered one young associate to her friend. "And rich, too," the friend giggled. "Imagine if he noticed one of us. He's the most eligible bachelor in the city." Unbeknownst to them, Elijah was already on his way, not in a luxury suit or with an entourage, but in disguise. Meanwhile, Grandma Marlene had her own plan in motion. She had no intention of reintroducing herself as the esteemed co-founder of the firm. Instead, she returned undercover as an aging janitor. Her mission was twofold: to see how the firm really operated when no one was putting on a show, and more importantly, to find her grandson a woman who would love him for his heart, not his wealth. Wearing plain clothes and a weathered wristwatch that looked like a dollar store knockoff, Grandma Marlene walked through the firm's front doors. Most employees walked past her without so much as a glance, but a group of sharply dressed women noticed her immediately. "Who let her in here?" one of them sneered, eyeing her from head to toe. "Wearing that fake-ass watch like she got money," another one scoffed. "Trying to act rich." Laughter erupted from the group. They pointed, whispered louder, and tossed petty insults her way for all to hear. Grandma Marlene remained quiet, her wise eyes watching. But when one of them stepped closer and accused her of trying to fake her way into the upper class, Marlene responded, calm as ever. "It's just an old watch," she said. "Why does it bother you so much?" Her voice, though soft, struck a nerve. One of the women pushed her shoulder. Marlene stumbled slightly, catching herself before she fell. Then a sharp voice cut through the tension. "That's enough, Tasha." The group went silent. Standing before them was Imani Brooks, a stunning young black attorney with confident eyes and a composed presence that demanded respect. "What are y'all doing?" Imani asked, folding her arms. "She's just doing her job. Don't y'all have anything better to do than bullying an elder?" The group shifted awkwardly. Tasha, unwilling to back down, scoffed. "Well, look who's talking. Ain't you the one who got dumped for being too nosy? No wonder you're still single." Imani's jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. "I wasn't dumped. I left him. I don't keep cheaters and liars in my life. It's called self-respect. You should try it sometime." Her words landed like a punch. One by one, the women turned and walked away, their energy deflated. Imani turned to Grandma Marlene, her expression softening. "Are you okay, ma'am?" Marlene gave a small nod and a warm smile. "I am now." "Thank you, dear." Imani shrugged. "It's nothing. But let me know if anyone gives you trouble again." As Imani returned to her desk, Grandma Marlene watched her with a sparkle in her eye. "She's got fire and heart," she murmured to herself. "This one's different." With a subtle smile and a plan forming in her mind, Grandma Marlene pushed her mop cart down the corridor, her mission just beginning. Later that afternoon, the firm had quieted down after the morning drama. Grandma Marlene knew this was the perfect time to speak with Imani again. She spotted the young lawyer at her desk, focused on reviewing a tall stack of legal briefs. Clearing her throat softly, Marlene approached. "Excuse me, dear," she said with a gentle tone. "May I have a moment of your time?" Imani looked up and smiled warmly, recognizing the older woman she had defended earlier. "Of course, ma'am. How can I help you?" Marlene slowly sat down across from her, folding her hands and leaning forward with curiosity dancing in her eyes. "I couldn't help but overhear the way your colleagues were talking earlier," she began. "It sounds like you're single." Imani blinked, a little caught off guard. She chuckled politely, unsure if the woman was teasing her Well, yes, I am, but I'm not really looking for anything right now. Had a rough go of things recently, so I'm just focused on my work. Marlene tilted her head. Heartbreak? Imani hesitated for a moment, then sighed. Something like that. My last boyfriend, he was a colleague here, cheated on me. And not just anywhere, he did it in this very office. I caught him with one of the associates. Her voice didn't crack, but the pain in her eyes spoke volumes. Marlene's expression turned serious. I'm sorry you had to go through that. You're right to be cautious, but I want you to know, my grandson Elijah isn't like that. Imani raised an eyebrow. Your grandson? Yes, Marlene replied, smiling softly. He's kind, respectful, and has a good head on his shoulders. Lost his parents in a car accident when he was a boy. I raised him myself. He's the type of man who treats women right. Not because he's told to, but because it's who he is. Imani offered a polite smile, still unsure how to respond. That's very sweet of you. But I'm not really in a place to be dating anyone. I'm still trying to heal. Marlene nodded in understanding, but her eyes never left Imani's. Well, if you ever change your mind, she said, rising to her feet slowly, I believe you'd be perfect for him. Just as Imani opened her mouth to respond, the office door opened, and a tall young man stepped inside. He carried himself with an easy grace, dressed in simple but clean-cut clothes. His features were striking, smooth, dark skin, deep, thoughtful eyes, and a quiet elegance that commanded attention without saying a word. Grandma, the young man said warmly as he approached. Marlene's face lit up with affection. Elijah, there you are, baby. Come here. Imani's eyes widened. This was her grandson? Elijah, this is Imani Brooks, Marlene said proudly. Imani, this is my grandson Elijah. He's a new intern here. Elijah extended his hand toward Imani with a charming, humble smile. It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Brooks. Imani shook his hand, her heart fluttering for a reason she didn't fully understand. Nice to meet you too, Elijah. Welcome to the firm. Thank you, Elijah said. I've heard this is a great place to learn. I'm excited to get started. Marlene watched the interaction, her heart swelling with quiet satisfaction. As Imani returned to her work, she stole one more glance at the man who had just walked into her life, having no idea how much he was about to change it. Elijah's first day as an intern began without fanfare. He didn't want special treatment or grand introductions. Dressed modestly and blending in with the rest of the staff, he walked through the office quietly, making mental notes of every face, every whisper, every subtle power dynamic. To most, he was just another assistant with a clipboard. But behind his calm demeanor and quiet smile, Elijah was carefully observing, watching how people treated each other when they thought no one important was watching. Through a bit of coincidence, orchestrated by Grandma Marlene, Elijah was paired to assist Imani on one of the firm's high-profile legal cases. The matter involved developing arguments for a civil rights class action, a case that required both legal brilliance and moral conviction. Imani, known for her razor-sharp mind and steady principles, had been assigned as lead counsel. Elijah, the intern, was tasked with organizing research, proofreading documents, and taking notes during prep sessions. But it wasn't long before Imani realized this so-called intern was anything but ordinary. You've got a real grasp of the law, she said during one late afternoon meeting, scanning a legal brief he'd annotated. Most interns wouldn't even know where to look for this kind of precedent. Elijah gave a modest shrug and smiled. I guess I read a lot. In my free time, I've always admired lawyers who actually care about justice, people like you. Imani blinked at the compliment. She wasn't used to that kind of sincerity, especially not from men. Thank you, she replied, her voice softer than usual. That means a lot. Meanwhile, Grandma Marlene remained on her undercover cleaning rounds, cart in hand and rag slung over one shoulder. But her sharp ears didn't miss a thing. Every time Imani smiled, or even better, laughed at something Elijah said, Marlene's heart fluttered with quiet joy. They're warming up to each other, she whispered to herself, sweeping the same hallway twice just to stay close. Yes, this just might work. This just might. Later that day, as the sun dipped behind the skyline and the office began to empty, Imani's phone buzzed. She looked down and saw her mother's name flashing across the screen. She sighed before answering. "Hi, Mama," she said cheerfully, putting on a brave tone. "Baby girl," her mother's voice sang through the line. "So, when am I meeting your boyfriend? You promised to bring him by." Imani froze, glancing toward Elijah across the room. She didn't have a boyfriend, but she also didn't have the heart to disappoint her mother again. "Soon, Mama. I promise you'll meet him soon." Her mother practically squealed with excitement. "You're not getting any younger, baby. I just want to see you happy." "I know," Imani said, forcing a laugh. "I'll call you back later, okay?" As the call ended, she put her phone down and exhaled heavily. Her mind buzzed with thoughts, but one question echoed louder than the rest. What if Elijah wasn't just pretending to be kind? What if he was real, different from the rest? Across the room, Elijah glanced up and noticed her troubled expression. He wanted to ask if she was okay, but something told him to wait. He knew trust took time. He would earn it. As the days passed, Imani and Elijah settled into a comfortable rhythm working together. What started as a simple intern-associate pairing slowly turned into a quiet partnership. They shared long hours in the conference room, bouncing ideas off each other, exchanging notes, sometimes arguing but always respectfully. And underneath it all, something deeper was stirring. Elijah, with his unassuming charm, had a way of making Imani feel seen, something no one at the firm had done in a long time. He never interrupted her when she spoke. He never tried to take credit for her ideas. He was just real, and that unnerved her in the best way. "You know," Imani said one evening as they packed up their files, "for an intern, you're pretty brilliant." Elijah chuckled. "I try to keep up." She gave him a playful side-eye. "Keep up? Half the time you're one step ahead of me." Elijah leaned against the edge of the desk, his expression thoughtful. "Honestly, working with you's been the best part of this whole experience. You don't just know the law, you care about it." Imani's smile faded into something more genuine. "That's rare around here." He nodded. "Tell me about it." Meanwhile, across the office, jealousy stirred. Tasha Grant, one of the firm's most ambitious associates, had been watching them closely. She had always had her eyes set on rising through the ranks and, if rumors were true, catching the attention of the mysterious heir himself, Elijah Carter. But now this intern was stealing all of Imani's time, and worse, Imani was starting to shine brighter than ever. The tipping point came a few days later during a staff meeting. Elijah had offered a well-thought-out solution to a client's complex legal issue, and Imani had praised him openly in front of everyone. Tasha couldn't hide her contempt any longer. As Imani walked past her desk, Tasha stood up with a smirk. "Well, if it isn't the Queen of Basic," she said loud enough for the room to hear. "Still dreaming of being noticed by the boss, huh?" Imani froze in her tracks. "Excuse me?" "Don't play dumb," Tasha continued. "You think just because you work late and flirt with interns, you're going to land a seat next to the throne? Please, people like you don't belong in the big leagues." Imani's heart pounded, her jaw tight, but before she could respond, Elijah stepped forward. "That's enough," he said, his tone calm but firm. Tasha raised an eyebrow. "And who do you think you are, intern?" Elijah didn't flinch. "I might be just an intern to you, but I know how to recognize a good person when I see one. Imani works harder than anyone here. She doesn't need to play games to earn respect." Snickers broke out from a few desks, but Tasha's glare turned cold. "You really want to defend her?" she snapped. "Be careful who you're aligning yourself with. That kind of loyalty could cost you." Elijah met her gaze evenly. "Then, I guess it's a price I'm willing to pay." Tasha rolled her eyes and stormed off. Imani looked at Elijah, surprised and deeply touched. "Thank you," she said quietly. He shrugged, smiling. "I just don't like bullies." Her smile lingered longer than usual. And for the first time in years, she let the walls around her heart lower just a little. The next few weeks brought a wave of change to the firm, though not everyone could see it. Imani and Elijah continued, working side by side, building a strong case and, quietly, a stronger connection. Their rapport was undeniable, visible in every shared glance, every late-night work session filled with laughter, and every cup of coffee one brought the other, without asking. But beneath the growing warmth, tension simmered. For Imani, things outside the firm were getting complicated. Her mother called more frequently now, each time with the same hopeful tone. "When are you bringing that boyfriend home, baby?" "You promised," her mother would say, joy and expectation tangled in every word. Imani's heart ached every time she had to lie. "Soon, Mama, I promise." And then there was the firm itself. Whispers floated through break rooms and copy areas. The long-absent Elijah Carter, the mysterious heir to Carter and Monroe, was rumored to be arriving any day to take full control of the firm. "Do you think he's really going to show up in person?" someone murmured near the elevators. I heard, "He's ruthless and brilliant. Bet he won't waste time with basic staff." Tasha Grant, never one to let rumors die quietly, added fuel to the fire. "Let's be real," she said during lunch one afternoon. "Mr. Carter is only going to pick top-tier talent for his team. Not every associate is cut out for that." Her eyes settled sharply on Imani as she said it. When Imani walked by moments later, Tasha made sure her voice carried. "You might want to stay in your lane, sweetheart. Elijah Carter isn't going to waste his time on nobodies from no-name schools." Imani stopped but didn't react. Her face remained unreadable, but her hands clenched into fists by her sides. Before she could say anything, Elijah stood up. "That's enough, Tasha." His voice wasn't loud, but it was unmistakably authoritative. Tasha turned toward him, eyebrows raised. "Really? You again? What is it with you and trying to be Captain Save-A-Sis?" Elijah's face didn't change. "Maybe I just believe that people should be judged by their work, not their school, their title, or who they know." "Cute," Tasha sneered. "You keep talking like that, and you'll stay right where you are, bottom of the ladder." Elijah tilted his head slightly. "Then maybe I'll build my own ladder." The room went quiet. Tasha scoffed, muttered something under her breath, and walked out. Imani stared at Elijah for a long moment. "You really didn't have to do that," she said softly once the crowd dispersed. Elijah looked at her with quiet conviction. "Yes, I did. You deserve better." And for Imani, those words settled somewhere deep in her chest, a place that hadn't felt warm in a long time. While the office buzzed with speculation about the elusive Elijah Carter's return, the man himself quietly continued his work disguised as Eli, the intern. No one suspected that the soft-spoken assistant helping Imani Brooks file documents and craft arguments was the actual heir to Carter and Monroe. And for Elijah, every passing day revealed more about the people he'd one day lead. Some inspired him, others disappointed him, and one woman, Imani, captivated him. Meanwhile, Grandma Marlene never let her eyes stray too far. Dressed in her humble cleaner's uniform, she drifted silently through the halls with her mop and bucket, her ears always open. She heard the gossip, she saw the jealous glances, and she noticed every time Elijah looked at Imani like she was sunlight in a room full of shadows. One day, as Elijah and Imani wrapped up another late work session, he hesitated by her desk. "Can I ask you something?" he said. Imani looked up, surprised by the seriousness in his tone. "Sure. Why'd you become a lawyer?" Imani paused, then leaned back in her chair. "Honestly, my community needed someone who looked like me to speak for them. My cousin got locked up for something he didn't even do. No real defense, no mercy, just gone. That changed me." Elijah nodded slowly, absorbing every word. "You're the kind of lawyer this world needs." Imani smiled faintly. "What about you? Why law?" He hesitated, just a second too long, then said, "Let's just say someone once inspired me, and I never forgot." She tilted her head, curious but didn't press. After Elijah left, Imani's phone buzzed. Her mother again. "When am I meeting your man, Imani?" her mother asked, half laughing, half serious. "Soon, Mama," Imani replied, her voice weary but warm. "Very soon." But deep down, a storm of questions stirred. She wasn't sure what they were, or where they were leading. All she knew was, this intern, Elijah, wasn't like anyone else. He made her feel like she was worth something beyond a resume or a title, but across the firm the storm was growing. Whispers about Elijah Carter's arrival were now full-blown predictions. "He'll probably clean house. I bet he's gonna pick his favorites. I hope he's not one of those quiet types who watches you before he fires you." Tasha, fueled by resentment and ambition, made sure to keep her claws sharpened, and Elijah, watching it all, quietly knew time was running out. He'd seen enough. The lies, the politics, the way people like Imani were undervalued despite carrying the firm on their backs. Soon, the truth would have to come out. But before that, he needed to know something first. If Imani fell for him now, would she still love him when she knew who he really was? Over the following days, the spark between Imani and Elijah slowly began to glow into something undeniable. What began as shared cases and late-night brainstorming sessions turned into walks to the parking lot, impromptu lunch breaks, and laughter that came too easily to be just professional. There was no grand confession, just quiet closeness that felt natural, like two puzzle pieces finally finding their place. One evening, after they wrapped up a long prep session, Elijah asked softly, "Can I take you out sometime? Not for coffee or casework, just you and me." Imani paused, heart pounding. She wasn't used to softness wrapped in sincerity. Most men came with ego or expectations, but Elijah felt different. She smiled slowly. "Okay, yeah, let's do that." Their first official date was simple, dinner at a tucked-away jazz cafe on the east side. Elijah picked her up in a modest car, wore a clean button-up and fresh kicks, and carried himself like a man raised with love and purpose. Imani, dressed in an elegant wrap dress, carried her own quiet strength. Over candlelight and the soulful hum of saxophones, they opened up more than ever before. She told him about her dreams of running her own legal aid clinic. He shared stories about losing his parents and being raised by a grandmother who believed in tough love and God's timing. Neither of them spoke of titles, or money, or ambition, just heart. But as their bond deepened, so did the tension at the office. Tasha Grant's jealousy had fermented into obsession. She watched from afar, lips curled in contempt every time Imani smiled, or Elijah pulled out a chair for her. She needed a way to break whatever was forming between them, and soon. Her opportunity came when she overheard them in the break room one evening, laughing over a shared joke, their connection unmistakable. Tasha narrowed her eyes and smiled coldly. She had a plan. A few days later, Imani and Elijah were scheduled to present a draft to one of the firm's biggest clients. Everything had been finalized, reviewed, and filed until just before the meeting, the documents were discovered to be riddled with errors. Whole sections were missing. Formatting was destroyed. Confidential details were inexplicably leaked. Chaos erupted. "Imani, what happened?" barked one of the senior partners. "This was supposed to be ready." Imani's heart sank. She had gone through the file line by line the night before. Before she could respond, Elijah stepped forward, calm as ever. "Let me see that," he said. He took the folder, flipped through it quickly, and pulled out a USB from his pocket. "This isn't the copy we submitted," he said, plugging in the drive. "This one is." Sure enough, the correct version, flawless and complete, appeared on the screen. The senior partner grunted and waved them into the meeting room. The crisis was averted, but Elijah knew better. Someone had tampered with their work, and only a handful of people had access. After the meeting, Tasha approached Imani with a venomous smile. "Close one," she purred. "Guess even your boyfriend couldn't save you if he hadn't caught that." Imani stared at her. She said nothing, but the look in her eyes said, "I see you." Elijah, watching nearby, clenched his jaw. He had stayed silent long enough. That night, he made a decision. The next morning, he stood in the center of the office as staff filtered in. His voice rang out clear and steady, "I need everyone's attention." Heads turned, whispers silenced. "I've kept quiet long enough," he said, "but it's time I tell you the truth. I'm not just an intern. My name is Elijah Carter." Gasps. "I've been working undercover to see how this firm runs when no one's watching, and I've seen a lot." At first, the office was frozen. Then a shrill, mocking laugh broke the silence. "Tasha." "You?" she cackled. "You're Elijah Carter? You've lost your damn mind." She looked around for support. "Y'all really buying this mess? He's probably delusional." Imani stared at him, stunned. "Elijah," she said quietly, pulling him aside. "Are you serious? Do you know how much trouble you could get into pretending to be the CEO?" "I'm not pretending," he said, voice firm. "I tried to tell you. You didn't believe me." She stared at him, torn between fear, disbelief, and something she couldn't name. "But if the firm finds out and doesn't believe you—" "I don't care," he said. "I'm not afraid to lose a title. But I am afraid of losing you." Imani's heart twisted, because for the first time, she wasn't sure what was real anymore. The firm was in chaos. After Elijah's bold declaration, confusion and disbelief swept through the office like wildfire. Staff members whispered behind cubicle walls, peeking over computer screens, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Did he really say he's Elijah Carter? He's lying, right? That can't be the real Elijah, can it? And at the center of it all stood Imani, caught in the eye of the storm. She pulled Elijah into a nearby office, shutting the door behind them. "What are you doing?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Do you know what this could mean if they think you're impersonating the CEO?" "I'm not impersonating," Elijah said calmly. "I am the CEO, Elijah Carter." Imani stared at him, her chest tight with disbelief. No, Elijah, this isn't funny anymore. If the real Elijah finds out, you could lose everything. Your job, your reputation, maybe even your future. Please just stop." Elijah's jaw clenched. He stepped closer, his voice low but raw. "I'm not lying to you, Imani. I've been trying to show you who I really am without the title. Because I needed to know if you'd see me for me. Not for the money, not for the name." Before she could respond, another voice joined the chaos, one that made Imani's blood run cold. Well, said Darius Miller, her ex-boyfriend, who still worked at the firm. He leaned against the doorway with a smug grin. "I see you really upgraded, huh, Imani? From a real lawyer to a broke intern who thinks he's Elijah Carter." Elijah turned, calm but with fire in his eyes. "Darius, leave her out of this." Darius chuckled. "Please, you're a nobody. You think pretending to be a billionaire makes you a man? It makes you pathetic." Imani's fists clenched at her sides. Elijah stood tall. "Say what you want about me, but don't disrespect Imani again." "Oh, relax," Darius sneered. "Y'all deserve each other. Delusional and desperate." Suddenly, the HR director appeared in the hallway, flanked by security guards. "Mr. Miller," she said sharply, "you're being terminated immediately. Gather your things." "What?" Darius blurted out. "This is a joke, right? You've been warned multiple times about your harassment and conduct. This was your final strike." Darius turned to Elijah and Imani, face red with rage. "This isn't over," he spat as he was escorted out of the building. The room fell silent again. Imani turned back to Elijah. Her hands trembled. "Tell me the truth right now. Is any of this real?" Elijah stepped closer, slowly, like walking toward a fragile edge. "Yes, it's all real. I'm Elijah Carter, and I love you." Imani looked away, overwhelmed. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Before things went this far?" "I tried," he said gently. "You didn't believe me. And honestly, I was scared. I thought if you found out you might walk away. She swallowed hard, her voice shaking. You should have trusted me. I do now. And if it's not too late, I'll spend the rest of my life proving that. Imani didn't answer. Her heart was a whirlwind of emotions. Love, confusion, anger, and something else she wasn't ready to name. That night, Elijah made a call. Malcolm, he said to his longtime personal assistant, I need you to come to the firm tomorrow. Pretend to be me, just for a few hours. Malcolm hesitated. You want me to impersonate the real Elijah Carter? Exactly, Elijah said. I need to see how everyone acts when they think they're meeting the CEO. I need the truth to hit them before I do. Malcolm sighed. All right, boss, but you better be watching close. I will be, Elijah replied. I want to see who's real and who isn't. The next morning, Carter and Monroe Law Firm was electric with gossip. Today's the day, someone whispered. I heard Elijah Carter's finally showing up in person. He's flying in from Atlanta just to shake things up. Whole firm's about to change. By 9 a.m. sharp, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the firm's front entrance. Out stepped Malcolm Reed, Elijah's trusted assistant, dressed in a tailored navy suit, crisp white shirt, and expensive watch. Every step he took screamed power. He walked through the lobby with a commanding air, introducing himself at reception as Mr. Elijah Carter. The staff, already jittery with excitement, immediately stood straighter, forced smiles, and began falling over themselves to impress him. Mr. Carter. Tasha Grant all but sprinted to him, adjusting her curls and putting on her most charming smile. It's such an honor to meet you. I've followed your career for years. Malcolm gave a polite nod. Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing how things run here. Tasha walked beside him like a shadow, ignoring everyone else. If there's anything you need, files, coffee, anything, I'd be happy to assist, personally. In a quiet corner, Elijah sat with a stack of case files, glasses on his face, dressed once again as Eli the intern. He watched the entire performance unfold. He smirked, especially when he saw how quickly Tasha had turned into someone completely different in front of perceived power. Across the room, Imani kept her focus on her work. She hadn't greeted Elijah Carter. She hadn't changed her rhythm. If anything, she looked more poised than ever, and Elijah noticed. Meanwhile, Grandma Marlene, still disguised as the janitor, stood near the elevators with her mop in hand and eyes narrowed. She wasn't fooled by flattery, fancy heels, or fake smiles. Her gaze stayed on Imani. She had made up her mind long ago. Imani Brooks was the one. But now, with the truth slowly rising to the surface, she knew it was time to step in once more. Later. That afternoon, Marlene faked a sudden spell of weakness. Clutching her chest, she leaned against the wall near Imani's office. Imani rushed out. Ms. Marlene, are you okay? I'm all right, baby, Marlene said faintly, waving her off. Just a little dizzy spell. Nothing a doctor can fix, you know. Should see someone, Imani said, concern in her eyes. Marlene shook her head. No doctor can fix what I need. What I need is peace. I want to see my grandson married before my time comes. Imani blinked, caught off guard. You don't have to say that. I'm serious, Marlene said softly, taking her hand. I see the way he looks at you, and I see the way you look back. You think I don't notice, but I do. Imani flushed, her heart pounding. You're good for him. You don't care about his name. You care about his soul. That's what makes you special. Imani bit her lip. Her mind flashed back to all their moments, Elijah's honesty, his loyalty, his defense of her when no one else stood up. Could it be real? That evening, back at her apartment, Imani sat on the couch, staring at her phone. When are you bringing your fiancé home? Her mom had texted earlier that day. She hadn't replied. The pressure was mounting. Marrying Elijah, fake intern, real CEO, would solve everything. But love, she knew, wasn't a solution. It had to be a choice. and somewhere deep down, she had already made it. Elijah sat in Grandma Marlene's cozy living room that evening, feeling the weight of everything building up. His secret, his love for Imani, the plan spinning wildly out of control. When he arrived, he found Marlene lying on the couch with a throw blanket over her legs and a faraway look in her eyes. "Grandma?" he asked, panic lacing his voice. "Are you okay?" She sighed dramatically, placing a hand on her chest. "Baby, I'm old. My bones are tired. I don't know how much longer the Lord's going to keep me around." Elijah's stomach dropped. "Don't say that." "I will say it because it's true," she replied, eyes twinkling even in her act. "And I've made peace with it. But before I go, there's one thing I want to see before I take my last breath." "What's that?" he asked, bracing himself. "You and Imani married?" Elijah blinked. "Grandma, we just started seeing each other." "She already said she's thinking about it," Marlene said, sitting up just slightly with a sly grin. "And don't act like you're not already in love. I see you. Every time she walks into a room, your whole face lights up." Elijah opened his mouth to argue, then shut it. She wasn't wrong. "I don't want to pressure her," he said finally. "You're not," Marlene said, laying back down. The next day, Marlene orchestrated a moment, claiming she was too weak to move, insisting both Elijah and Imani visit her together. They arrived and sat side by side as Marlene lay under a shawl on the couch, looking pale but pleased. "You two mean so much to me," she said in a weak voice. "All I want is to see you happy. I know it's sudden, but would you consider getting married? Not for me, for each other." The room fell silent. Then Imani turned to Elijah, her voice quiet but firm. "I've been thinking about it," she admitted. "My mom, she keeps asking when I'm bringing someone home. And honestly, I don't want to lie to her anymore." She looked at Elijah directly. "I love you. I don't care about the job title, or the status, or who you are on paper. I care about how you treat me. You make me feel seen." Elijah's heart swelled. "And you've made me feel more real than I've ever felt. You're the first person who's loved me without the Carter name." Marlene beamed. "That's settled then," she said suddenly, sitting up straighter than she had in days. "We'll keep it simple. A small ceremony, quick and quiet." Elijah and Imani looked at each other in stunned silence. "You seem to be doing a lot better," Elijah noted, raising a brow at Marlene. "I told y'all. Love heals." She winked. "Now get moving. I've got a dress picked out for her already." And just like that, a few days later, Imani and Elijah stood at the city registry office, exchanging vows in front of a small group of loved ones, mostly close friends, and, of course, Grandma Marlene sitting front row in a bright floral dress with tears in her eyes and pride in her heart. Imani wore a modest white gown that hugged her perfectly and glowed in the morning sunlight. Elijah, in a crisp gray suit, couldn't take his eyes off her. As they said "I do," their hands trembled, but not with doubt, with gratitude. They were building something real, something theirs. After the ceremony over dinner at a quiet soul food bistro, Elijah leaned toward his grandmother and whispered what had been weighing on him. "Grandma, what if she finds out the truth and feels betrayed?" Marlene squeezed his hand. "She will find out," she said. "But love built on truth can survive anything, as long as your heart is in the right place." Elijah nodded, trying to believe her, but deep down he knew the hardest part was still ahead. Married life hadn't changed the way Imani walked into Carter and Monroe. Her stride was still calm, her energy grounded. She didn't flash rings or flaunt titles. She wasn't even wearing her wedding band at work by choice. She wanted her reputation to stand on merit, not mystery, but everyone around her could sense something had shifted. She smiled more. She stood taller, and for some people, that joy was unbearable, especially for Tasha Grant. Whispers had started circulating again. No one had seen the real Elijah Carter, well, not officially. The CEO had come and gone like a phantom, leaving behind an aura of fear, awe, and mystery. But the gossip mill had refocused on Imani. "She's way too confident lately," one assistant said. "She probably thinks she's about to be promoted," another muttered. But Tasha had her own theory. "She's hiding something," she said one morning to a junior clerk. "She always acts so pure. But no one's that perfect, trust me, something shady's going on." And Tasha wasn't content with speculation. She wanted Imani gone. So she made a move. One afternoon during a team meeting, she stood up in the middle of a presentation, holding a sleek black folder in her hand and wearing a smug smile. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice ringing across the room. "But I have something urgent to report." All eyes turned toward her. "It's come to my attention," she continued, slowly opening the folder, "that Ms. Imani Brooks has been leaking sensitive documents to one of our rival firms." Gasps. Imani froze. "What?" she said, stunned. Tasha held up what looked like printed emails, each one featuring Imani's name, signature, and timestamps. "This evidence shows multiple unauthorized accesses to confidential files and communication with outside legal counsel." Murmurs swept the room like a tidal wave. Imani's throat closed up. Her face remained composed, but inside, panic roared. "I've never seen those emails in my life," she said. Tasha shrugged. "Then explain the metadata. Explain the login activity." The meeting ended in chaos. HR said they would launch a formal internal investigation. Imani walked out of the room under heavy stares and heavier silence. Elijah, still in disguise as Eli, found her afterward near the break room. "I believe you," he said quietly, handing her a cup of hot tea. She nodded, unable to speak at first. "This could ruin everything." "It won't," he said, "not if I have anything to say about it." "But they think I'm guilty," she whispered. "And if this gets out, people will say I was only here because of who I married." Elijah looked down, because that was the part that hurt most. She hadn't used his name, not once. Not for favor, not for gain. She had earned every bit of her respect the hard way. "I'm going to fix this," Elijah said. He meant it, and he wasn't the only one moving behind the scenes. Grandma Marlene heard about the accusation the very next hour and didn't waste time. She made a few calls to old friends in cybersecurity, pulled strings in high places, and began a quiet investigation of her own, without anyone at the firm knowing. In her eyes, this wasn't just an attack on Imani, it was an attack on the family. The days that followed were some of the hardest Imani had ever faced. Her coworkers' stares grew longer. Conversations hushed when she entered the room. Some who once smiled now avoided eye contact altogether. Others whispered behind their screens, feeding off the scandal Tasha had stirred. Even though no official verdict had been made, the damage was already being done. But Imani didn't crumble. She stayed late at the office every night, meticulously collecting evidence, reviewing case logs, documenting every move she had made during the time of the alleged leak. Elijah stayed with her. Every night. He didn't just offer moral support, he printed reports, cross-checked data, and made late-night snack runs to keep her going. He didn't once leave her alone in the storm. Still, the weight on Imani's shoulders never eased, until, one evening, something changed. She was headed toward the break room when she heard voices echoing from a nearby conference room. The door was slightly cracked. One voice stopped her in her tracks. It was Elijah. Inside, he was speaking with Malcolm Reed, his assistant and the man who had impersonated him as Elijah Carter a few days prior. "I need to end this charade soon, Malcolm," Elijah said. "Imani deserves the truth. She doesn't even know. She's married to the real CEO. I wanted her to see me without the name. But now, with Tasha's accusations, I can't keep hiding." "Sir," Malcolm replied, his voice measured, "if you reveal everything now, it could complicate things, especially with a case hanging over your wife's head." Imani's breath caught in her throat. "Sir? Wife?" Her mind spun. "I don't care how complicated it gets," Elijah continued. "Imani deserves to know who she married. She deserves to know that I'm Elijah Carter. Not Eli the intern. Her knees nearly buckled. She backed away from the door, heart racing, head spinning. Elijah Carter, the billionaire, the CEO, the man she had fallen in love with, had married, was the very man she thought she barely knew. That evening she waited for him at their apartment. She didn't cry, she didn't shout. She sat in silence. When Elijah walked through the door, he paused immediately. "Imani," he said carefully. "What's wrong?" She stood slowly. "I overheard you talking to Malcolm." His expression fell. "You're Elijah Carter," she said, her voice a mixture of heartbreak and disbelief. "You're the CEO of Carter and Monroe, the man this whole firm has been waiting for, and you never told me." Elijah exhaled, stepping toward her. "I wanted to. You married me without telling me who you really were," she said, her voice cracking. "Do you know how that feels?" Paused. "I didn't lie to hurt you, Imani. I wanted you to love me without the name, without the money, without the pressure." "You had so many chances to tell me," she whispered, "before we dated, before the wedding." "I was scared," he admitted. "Scared you'd feel betrayed, that you'd leave." Imani's eyes glistened, but she held her ground. "And now?" Elijah stepped closer, his voice low and sincere. "Now I'm ready to be honest. About everything. I love you. And I still owe you a real wedding. The one you truly deserve. If you'll let me." Imani turned away, her heart battling itself. "I need time," she said softly. "I don't know if I'm angry or just hurt, but I need space to process all of this." Elijah nodded slowly. "Take all the time you need. I'll wait." Imani didn't answer. She just walked to the window, staring out into the night, wondering how love could feel so right and so complicated all at once. The next morning, Elijah made a choice. No more disguises. No more secrets. He walked into Carter and Monroe, this time not as Eli the intern, but as Elijah Carter, CEO and heir of the firm. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, no badge, no clipboard, just presence. The effect was immediate. People stopped mid-conversation. Heads turned, mouths parted, whispers cascaded through the office like a tidal wave of shock. Tasha Grant, seated at her desk, narrowed her eyes and leaned back smugly. "Looks like the intern finally got himself fired," she muttered loud enough for several others to hear. "Told y'all he wouldn't last long." One of her co-workers chuckled. "He shouldn't have gotten involved with that girl in the first place." Tasha stood, smoothing her blouse. "And speaking of her, Imani should be packing her things. Can't save her now." Imani, who had heard it all from across the room, stayed quiet, her expression unreadable. She simply gathered her documents and went back to her work, shoulders straight, eyes forward. She didn't flinch, because now she knew who she was, and more importantly, she knew who Elijah was. But she wasn't going to say a word. Not yet. Let them talk. Let them mock. They would all find out the truth soon enough. Behind the glass doors of the executive suite, Elijah sat in his rightful place, at the head of the firm. For now, he kept his reintroduction low-key. Meetings were scheduled, appointments set. But the silence was temporary. The storm was coming. That afternoon, Grandma Marlene joined him in the private conference room. She had shed her janitor uniform and wore a bold Ankara print blouse, her gray curls wrapped in a matching headscarf. "You ready?" she asked him, arms folded. "Almost," Elijah said. She walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're not just fixing a company. You're protecting a woman who believed in you when no one else did." He nodded slowly. "I know." Across the building, Imani remained calm and composed as the whispers continued to swirl. But while others gossiped, she worked, she researched, she planned. Because though her heart was still healing, her mind was sharp, and she wasn't about to let Tasha Grant take her down without a fight. A week had passed since Elijah returned as CEO, and tension hung in the air like smoke. Staff now walked on eggshells, unsure how to behave around the once ignored intern, who now sat behind a mahogany desk on the top floor. Many were ashamed. Some were terrified. A few, like Tasha, still believed it was all smoke and mirrors. But not for long. Elijah had seen enough. It was time. That morning, a full staff meeting was called in the main conference hall. Everyone filed in, murmuring nervously, the room thick with anticipation. Imani arrived in silence, her posture calm but unreadable. Tasha stood tall beside her, wearing a red blazer and an expression full of smug confidence. Elijah entered last, followed by Grandma Marlene in her vibrant head wrap. The room fell dead silent. Elijah stepped to the front, his gaze scanning every face. "Thank you all for being here," he began, voice strong and unshaken. "There are some things that need to be addressed." People glanced at one another. "I want to begin by confirming something that many of you have been speculating about. I'm not Eli the intern. My name is Elijah Carter. I am the CEO of this firm." Gasps echoed around the room. Mouths fell open. A few people straightened in their chairs like they'd just woken from a dream. Tasha's smile twitched slightly, but she didn't sit down. "And while I was undercover," Elijah continued, "I saw the best and worst this firm had to offer. I saw who leads with integrity and who uses power to destroy others." His eyes met Imani's, softening. "Which brings me to the next truth. Imani Brooks is not just one of our most gifted attorneys. She is also my wife." The room erupted. Again, whispers turned into waves. Some were stunned, others were ashamed. Tasha, however, stood. "You married her?" she said loudly. "That explains why she was protected. That explains why she didn't get fired when I exposed her for leaking." "You exposed nothing," Elijah cut in sharply. "Because everything you brought forward, Gan, was fake." He turned to the room, holding up a folder. "We conducted a thorough investigation, security logs, IP address tracing, surveillance footage, and what we found was clear." He turned toward Tasha, "You planted those documents, you tampered with evidence, you fabricated emails to frame an innocent woman just to sabotage her career." Tasha's mouth opened and closed. "That's not true. She had access too." Before she could spin more lies, the conference room door swung open. Layla Dupree, the elegant socialite who had once tried to reclaim Elijah's attention, stepped in, heels clicking on the polished floor. Everyone turned to stare. "Tasha," Layla said coolly, "stop embarrassing yourself." Tasha blinked, confused. "You didn't do this alone," Layla continued. "I helped you, I coached you, I let you use my access, and I'm not proud of it. But I'm not going to let you throw me under the bus." The room went completely still. Layla's confession hit like thunder. "I wanted Elijah back, and I thought if I helped take down Imani, I'd get a second chance. I was wrong." Tasha spun toward her. "You said no one would find out." "I changed my mind," Layla snapped. "You went too far." Security appeared at the back of the room. Elijah nodded. "Escort them both out. They're no longer welcome here." As Tasha and Layla were led away, the silence in the room became something else. Something weighty, reflective, and ashamed. Elijah turned back to his employees. Imani was accused without proof, harassed without cause, and even in the face of lies, she remained composed and professional. That's the kind of strength we should be celebrating here. He took a deep breath and looked at her again. "She's not just my wife. She's a woman of honor. And from today forward, this firm will reflect those values, or you will find employment elsewhere." No one said a word. But the shame was heavy in their eyes. Imani stepped forward, her voice steady. "I'm not here for sympathy," she said. "But I do hope you've learned something from all of this. Kindness is not weakness, and bullying is not leadership." Elijah reached for her hand. Together they walked out of the room, heads high, hearts strong, leaving behind the chaos and walking into the truth they built together. In the weeks that followed, Elijah and Imani became the quiet heartbeat of Carter and Monroe. Colleagues who once gossiped now greeted them with respect. Those who had doubted Imani now asked for her insight. And while neither of them bragged or flaunted their positions, it was clear they were the firm's power couple. But outside of work, their bond grew stronger than ever. One quiet evening, as the city lights shimmered in the distance, the couple sat on their high-rise balcony, wrapped in fleece blankets and sipping warm tea. The hum of traffic below was a comforting backdrop to the silence they shared. "Elijah?" Imani said gently. Is there something you've never told me?" He smiled. "So many things, but there's one I've been meaning to." He set down his cup, leaned forward and took her hand. "When I was a kid, I was shy. Real shy. After my parents died, I barely spoke to anyone. I didn't know how to be around people. I was just floating." Imani leaned in, her brows furrowing. "One day at school, some kids cornered me behind the gym," Elijah continued. "They pushed me, taunted me for being the quiet kid with nice shoes. I tried to fight back, but I was outnumbered." Imani's breath caught. "And then someone stepped in," he said, his eyes softening. "A girl about my age. She got in front of me, hands on her hips, and told them to back off." Elijah chuckled. "Told them if they didn't stop, she'd sue every one of them for harassment when she became a lawyer." Imani blinked. "Wait." She called the principal on her flip phone, scared the hell out of those boys, and then she turned to me and said, "Next time, stand up for yourself." She stared at him, mouth parted. "That was me?" Elijah nodded. "I never forgot that day. You were fierce. You were everything I wasn't: strong, brave, defiant." Imani leaned back, speechless. "You're the reason I became a lawyer," he said softly. "I wanted to be like the girl who stood up to a bunch of bullies without blinking." She laughed in disbelief, her eyes shimmering. "All this time?" "When I walked into that law firm and saw you again," he said, "I knew it was you. And I told myself I wouldn't let you slip away again." Imani cupped his face in her hands, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've been holding on to that all this time?" He nodded. "You've been my inspiration since I was 12 years old." They sat in stillness, wrapped in something deeper than love. History. She kissed him softly, forehead pressed against his. "Guess we were meant to find each other again," she whispered. "I think we always were," he replied. The next weekend, Elijah and Imani visited Grandma Marlene for dinner at her cozy brownstone in West End, Atlanta. The house was filled with the aroma of baked macaroni, collard greens, and slow-roasted chicken. Gospel music hummed softly from an old radio in the corner. They sat around her worn but lovingly polished dining table, sharing stories, laughter, and second helpings. "You two make such a beautiful pair," Marlene said, pouring sweet tea into Elijah's glass. "It's like God braided your souls together before y'all were even born." Elijah smiled, his hand resting lightly on Imani's knee. "You were the one who braided us together, Grandma," he teased. Marlene waved a hand. "I just gave a little nudge." The rest was divine timing. After dessert, as everyone leaned back in their chairs, full and happy, Marlene looked at them with a twinkle in her eye. "You know what would make this even better?" she said suddenly. Imani raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Great-grandbabies." Imani nearly choked on her sweet tea. Elijah chuckled, trying to hide his amusement. "I'm serious," Marlene insisted, pointing a playful finger. "I'm not getting any younger. I want to hold a little one before the Lord calls me home." Imani's cheeks turned a deep shade of red. "Grandma, I'm just saying," Marlene added, not missing a beat. "You already married, and y'all look at each other like two characters in a black romance novel." Elijah laughed, reaching over to squeeze Imani's hand. "We're taking our time, Grandma. No rush." "Well, don't take too long," She grinned. You know I'm not patient. The rest of the evening passed in a cozy blur. Board games, old family stories, and Grandma Marlene's famous peach cobbler. Later that night, as they were walking back to their car, Imani slipped her hand into Elijah's and looked up at him. She's not going to let this go, is she? He smiled. Not a chance. Imani sighed, laughing softly. Guess we'll have to figure it out, in our own time. They stopped at the sidewalk, city lights flickering behind them. Elijah pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her waist. No pressure, he said. As long as we're together, we'll figure everything out. You and me. Imani leaned, her head against his chest, the steady beat of his heart calming her. Yeah, she whispered. You and me. Just as things had begun to settle, a shadow lurked beyond the Carter home, one that hadn't accepted defeat. Layla Dupree sat parked in a sleek black car down the block from Elijah and Imani's gated mansion. Her nails tapped the steering wheel as she watched the lights inside their home flicker gently in the night. She couldn't believe how easily she'd been dismissed. Cast out. Rejected. For her? Layla thought. Her jaw clenched. For a girl who came up with nothing. She had helped Elijah build part of his public image once, stood beside him at galas, attended charity balls, and now she was invisible to him. But she had a plan. One final attempt to remind him of what they once had. That afternoon, she waited until Imani left the house to run errands. Timing was everything. Using a security code she'd stolen long ago, she slipped inside the mansion through the back patio, quiet, focused. She walked through the elegant living room and straight to the kitchen where a bottle of imported wine sat chilling in the fridge. Layla pulled a small vial from her purse, a clear liquid. Tasteless. Odorless. Just a little reminder, she whispered, pouring it into one of the glasses, of who you used to love. She set the glass on the coffee table, precisely where she knew Elijah would sit after work. What she didn't know was that Grandma Marlene had planned a surprise drop-in visit that same evening. The moment Marlene stepped through the front door, she paused. The air was too still. She walked into the living room and immediately spotted Layla lounging comfortably on the couch. What are you doing here? Marlene's voice cut like a knife, sharp, firm. Layla's confidence cracked. I was just visiting Elijah. He didn't invite you. Layla stood, brushing off her designer coat. It was just a gesture. I brought wine. Marlene's sharp eyes zeroed in on the untouched glass. She walked over, picked it up and sniffed. Then she leaned in closer. Her face darkened. What did you put in this? Layla stepped back. It's nothing. It's just wine. Security, Marlene called out without turning her head. Within seconds, a guard appeared. Get this woman out of this house, permanently. You don't understand, Layla protested. I was just trying to poison my grandson? Marlene snapped. You're done, sweetheart. As Layla was dragged out, kicking and yelling, Marlene shook her head, her pulse still steady, her instincts sharper than ever. She picked up the phone and called Imani. Baby, I need you home. Now. Within minutes, Imani was at the door. Grandma, what happened? Marlene explained everything. Layla sneaking in, the wine, the vial. Imani's face went pale. She tried to drug him. Marlene nodded. But don't worry, I took care of it. Before Imani could respond, Marlene turned and nudged her gently toward the hallway. He's upstairs. You need to be with him. I don't know what to say, Imani whispered. Say what's in your heart, Marlene said, smiling, and lock that door behind you. Then she gave the door a little push and shut it behind Imani. Click. Imani turned to find Elijah sitting on the edge of the bed, his tie undone, brow furrowed. Hey, he said softly. She walked over, her eyes full of emotion. Layla came here tonight. I know, he replied. Security told me. I don't know how she even got in. She tried to drug you, Elijah, Imani said, her voice trembling. His face fell. What? Grandma stopped her. But it could have gone very differently. He stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the last good thing left in the world. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I never wanted to bring that danger into our lives." Shh. Imani buried her face in his chest. "We'll be okay, as long as we're honest. As long as we face it together." Elijah nodded against her hair. "Always." 2 weeks after the incident with Layla, peace had finally returned to the Carter household. The security system had been upgraded, restraining orders had been filed, and Grandma Marlene, despite her age, still made sure everyone in the building knew who ran things. One quiet Sunday evening, the entire Carter family gathered, once again at Marlene's brownstone for dinner. The table was alive with laughter, cornbread, and stories from Elijah's childhood that Imani had never heard. But just as dessert was served, Imani suddenly excused herself. "I'm just going to the restroom," she said casually, smiling. 10 minutes passed, then 15. When she returned, her face was pale and she walked a little slower. Elijah noticed first. "You okay?" "I think." She paused, placing a hand gently on her stomach. "I think I ate something funny." Marlene's eyes narrowed, not with worry, but with suspicion. Elijah stood up, already pulling out his phone. "That's it. I'm taking you to the hospital." "I'm fine, really," Imani insisted. "It's probably just too much peach cobbler." But Elijah was already guiding her toward the car, not taking any chances. Later that evening, as they sat in a quiet clinic, the doctor walked in with a smile and a chart in her hand. "Well," she said, looking at Imani. "Congratulations." Imani blinked. "Wait, what?" "You're pregnant," the doctor said, gently. "Just about 5 or 6 weeks." Imani stared, stunned. Elijah reached for her hand, eyes wide. "Are you serious?" She nodded slowly, a smile creeping onto her face. "I guess Grandma's going to get her wish." When they returned, home, Marlene was waiting in the living room in her robe, arms folded, but that knowing sparkle dancing in her eyes. Elijah smiled. "You're not going to believe this," Marlene grinned. "Try me." "We're having a baby," Marlene gasped, covering her mouth. "Hallelujah, thank you, Lord." Then she practically danced across the living room, crying and laughing all at once. "My heart is full," she said, wrapping Imani in a warm hug. "I prayed for this. I prayed for you." Imani leaned into her embrace, tears filling her eyes. "I think this baby's going to be spoiled," Elijah chuckled. "By the entire city," Marlene declared proudly. "And don't worry, I've already picked out names." Elijah and Imani looked at each other and laughed, more in love than ever. In the weeks that followed, the firm embraced a new chapter as well. Elijah restructured the leadership team, promoted overlooked talent, and implemented a new mentorship program with Imani as its first director. Her strength, wisdom, and empathy were no longer underestimated. They were celebrated, and every time she walked into a courtroom or meeting room, she carried not just her name but her legacy. The girl who once defended a scared boy behind a schoolyard, the woman who stood her ground when the world doubted her, the wife who chose love over luxury, the mother-to-be who would raise a child surrounded by faith, strength, and history.